Hi everybody and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you?
I'm a bit irritated with Sam Altman, Mal, because when we finished the pod last week, wrapped it all up, and then suddenly he drops his new big model. It's almost like he did it to irk us.
Yes, yeah. You and him have a bit of a testy relationship, don't you?
I know.
Yeah.
But I'm also excited about this week because for the first time in a long time, we've got some quite chunky property news items to get stuck into.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, let us dive straight into our property news. All right. So there was some big news at the beginning of this week, wasn't there? All about Purplebricks. So for those that haven't observed, the brothers Michael and Kenny Bruce are coming back to the business that they founded, 2013, 2014, something like that, a long time ago. Yes, they are coming back with a bag. And Charles Dunstan, who is the lead backer of the artist formerly known as Strike, that changed its name to the Purplebricks a few years ago, and then offered the service for free for a while and then dropped that, and now is charging a little bit for it. He's recruited the Bruce Bros back with a view to supercharging it and getting it back out there and really kind of, going all over again. Going to be an interesting few weeks and months, I'd suspect. Matt, what about you?
It's certainly created a bit more noise on property industry and the like, hasn't it? And I think it's interesting, like they launched back in 2014 and just in that short period of time, given that, they dropped away. When did Michael Bruce quit? 2019? I say quit,
yeah, I think so.
Stepped down. And that was 7 years ago. So it's quite a lot of headlines for something that's relatively new, but I guess it was quite era defining, wasn't it? And I'm intrigued to hear, because I know you're really excited about this one.
Yeah, look, I think that the big problem with it was that essentially it said something that it basically convinced vendors or aimed to convince vendors that it was possible to sell your house for like 999 quid. And that actually turned out to be subsidized heavily, like to the tune of 197 million pounds by investors. So actually, it's a classic kind of tech play. They were trying to grab the market and then, gently, once they had that, kind of up the actual price itself after the event. So it was a massive kind of investment play, really. And obviously, in the end, it didn't work, right? And the problem that they found that most smart agents do is that actually this is a transaction that does not happen often enough in a person's life for them to be to remember who they moved with, to be a kind of consistent buyer of the service. So that means that you've got to keep advertising. Basically, there is a whole new tranche of people every single week, month, year that you have to convince to use your service, and that is where all the marketing money went. So that 197 million obviously was sunk in, and then it sold for £1 to Strike and Charles Dunstan a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago now. And I think through all of that, there was a lot of collateral damage. There was damage to commission rates. I think particularly, there was a lot of agents that I know, and I'm sure you do as well, that found themselves having to discount their commission rates as a result of Purplebricks' relentless portrayal of traditional estate agency as basically money grabbing con artists who were trying to steal your money as a seller for not doing very much, and that Purplebricks could do it just for £1,000 and it was all done. And obviously also they were charging up front. So I do think that it's going to be interesting to see how they come at it. I anticipate it's going to be quite aggressively because, that's the nature of the two people involved. I think it's going to be interesting to see how much money they can raise. Obviously, it is a hungry beast, is Purplebricks, as anybody who's invested in it to this point has found to their cost. But obviously, Sir Charles Dunstan is backing them. Perhaps he's going to be able to get some of his mates from the city to throw some money in as well. Lest we forget, alongside the 197 million from Purplebricks that investors lost, also about 55 million went into Boomin, which was the venture that they started in 2021, I think, back then. And that itself also, kind of collapsed under the weight of its kind of enormous spending. Interestingly, about 6 weeks ago, I think we may have commented on the pod, Michael Bruce settled with the administrators of Boomin for some technology that was the best way of trying to articulate this without kind of getting into legal trouble is the facts are that essentially there was a lot of technology in Boomin. That technology seemed to, some months before it collapsed, be transferred across to an entity owned by Michael Bruce called My Bespoke Room. The administrators had been trying to recover some of the money from that asset. And in the end, Michael Bruce agreed to pay without prejudice £60,000 in 3 tranches over the next 3 years for that technology. And that is all the technology that Boomin created, and it cost millions obviously to create. So I imagine that that's going to be folded in somewhere into the new Purplebricks, and people are going to be able to use that kind of Boomin technology within Purplebricks itself, and which also kind of speaks to perhaps the reticence of a lot of estate agents at the time Boomin was created to actually believe that Michael and Kenny had really changed their spots and had decided that actually they did love traditional estate agents after all. So yeah, I think it's going to be one that we're going to keep an eye on, Matt? It's going to be quite exciting.
Very much so. And I think I'm pleased you brought up the Boomin sort of years as well, because obviously that was their last real venture. So seeing if they could come back Steve Jobs style and sort of salvage Purplebricks. And I know you'd commented on Charles Dunstan before. He's like, he's never going to give up this fight or war he's waging against estate agents. And it looked like that war was fading, didn't it, when Strike got Purplebricks and then had to silently reintroduce the charging model. But there's some pretty deep pockets there.
Yeah, and yeah, like you say, he seems absolutely hell-bent on, I'm sure he would call it disrupting, but some might call it destroying an industry that has obviously wronged him at some stage, I'd imagine.
I was going to say, who smited him?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think it's, everybody is going to have to. The thing I think that was missing from the last time when Purplebricks was in its pomp, kind of late 2010s, was actually a coordinated campaign or a coordinated kind of mission that kind of just articulated what traditional estate agency was and why it was good. So actually, if you look at the face of it, you don't pay anything as a seller until this property sells. All right. And it's 1.2% on average, something like that. It's the lowest in the Western world, right? That we charge here in the UK for that service. And it's a great service, right? You might save yourself $3,000 at the front end, but you on perhaps 10, 15, 20 grand in terms of what you get for your property because your incentives are aligned with the sellers, right? You want to get it sold and you want to make the most money out of it as possible. So that's an aligned incentive. Whereas with Purplebricks, it is, you pay that grand up front and they've got very little incentive to bother selling it. And you and I, over the years, have seen so many Purplebricks for sale signs forever outside certain houses.
And strike boards as well, right? So it's Purplebricks and strike seem to be the most predominant that are weathered and fading and popped up all over the place. And I think the really interesting part as well is that they're coming back to a different and changed landscape, aren't they? There's quite a lot of time you see previous Purplebricks agents who are now as self-employed agents. And like obviously that fee structure and there's a lot of well-established sort of traditional agents who are doing the upfront fee sort of model now as well. And but you can choose to pay more upfront and less on completion. And vendors are going with that approach. So it's not the same commisery market that they'd sort of launched into last time.
Yeah, that's right. And I do, obviously there are a lot of costs involved in marketing a property and selling a property. And if the property then does not sell, then you've sunk a lot of costs in. So I think the kind of the old slider that kind of, as I know in Preston and others have been kind of championing it for a while now. I think that's really good because what it does, again, it aligns your incentives with the actual person and they get to choose. So I think that's absolutely, and I often hear people say, and it is in part true, that Purplebricks did drive technological updating within the market. Actually they came along and kind of just essentially parked up, started putting all this technology out there, and that made agents sit up and actually start to move perhaps a bit faster. So
agent and technology providers, right? We get launched the Repeat Digital Agent, quite a catchy name for people being able to do a similar sort of journey on again, traditional agents' websites rather than as a sort of anti-Purplebricks point.
Yeah. So look, again, I think what we as an industry will be looking out for is, are they going to come back in again and just try and reprise their greatest hits and, just shout
Oasis
about commisery?
Style.
Yeah, exactly. Commisery and all that sort of stuff. Or are they actually going to kind of, be, perhaps a little bit more, let's call it, responsible and, courteous around the industry and try and, actually be part of it rather than against it. But time will tell. I don't think if I was to cast my eyes over the entrails of the previous businesses they've been involved with that they're necessarily going to play nice, but time we will see as it goes through.
Have they signed up to My Porter yet?
Not as yet, no. But yes, I think it's going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out as well. we always are open and honest and transparent about our thoughts, but their aim will be no doubt to try and get back up to the significant percent that they have been in the past, but it will be a difficult and different job this time out, I think, in the world of AI and the world of agents being able to access far, far more technology themselves rather than having to kind of put up with them watching it being built with investor money somewhere else. All right. So that was our first story that went on a little bit in property news. Next up, Connells have agreed a major deal, quote, with On the Market to list their properties, hundreds of thousands of them. So it's hard on the heels of Connells Group agreeing a similar deal with Zoopla, I think towards the end of last year, maybe earlier this year. So, those that utilize Connells different brands to sell or let their properties obviously have now got access to all three of these property portals in the UK. I do wonder sometimes about these, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall, because I'm assuming that it's probably not at these same commercial rates that most of the other agents in the country are paying. What do you think?
If they're paying anything at all, right? There's it's an interesting time for CoStar, and I know you've got a section on it next as well because of the rebel investors and such like. But Connells are still the biggest network in the country, aren't they? So was it 1,263 branches across 86 brands, and winning that's obviously a big feather in the cap for Jason Tebb, and boosts their distribution. Really makes sure that they're going toe to toe with Zoopla, if not obviously at this stage Rightmove. And I think it'd be a good thing if we're making sure that those listings are visible everywhere rather than just ring fence to Rightmove. But yeah, I think it's going to frustrate a lot of people who are having to pay for being members of these portals, aren't they? And I know that obviously your big tour's just come to an end, and one element of it is the amount that people have to pay to be on Rightmove versus the likes of Connells, who are paying next to nothing to sort of have the privilege of placing their listings on there.
Yeah, and look, what I found as I went around, so we completed on Tuesday the 60-day tour, which was amazing, and thanks to everybody for coming along. Yeah, one of the big kind of issues was very much about the average that Rightmove is charging is about 1,600 quid, but almost every agent that I spoke to, and the vast majority were independents, were paying 2,000 plus already. So the average then means that obviously somebody is paying 500 quid per branch. And I think we could probably guess who that is. So yeah, I think it just gives a competitive advantage, right? If you are paying, 3-4 times what your competitor branch is paying in marketing costs, then that is a huge disadvantage, or certainly one that you've got to try and make up somewhere else. So yeah, again, it just comes down to, without going back into anything to do with Rightmove, because this was a week we were not talking about. But yeah, it does obviously make for difficulties elsewhere in the market. But yes, as far as this story with On the Market and Connells is concerned, yeah, another kind of another indicator, I think, that kind of the content side of things is where the battle is, right? How do you actually make sure that you've got enough? You've got the properties listed, because that is that's what people are looking for, right? I remember when we set up Zoopla, we were absolutely relentless in like, how do we get abundance of listings, and that was the phrase we constantly came back to, because that's what people want. In the end, I think that's going to be the make or break for all these portals, all portals, is the content there that's going to be interesting enough to the consumer. I think, we're going to enter, we talk a lot about the AI kind of searches and things like that. In about a year's time, that's table stakes. All right. If you are not doing some kind of AI search functionality, then you're dead. So I think everybody's going to be doing that. And then it's going to come down to what it always comes down to, which is value. Actually, what am I getting when I'm spending my time on this portal? What am I actually getting? How is it kind of coming through? What's the user experience, etc.? So I think those are the things that are going to be the differentiators in the future. But certainly, the fact that On the Market has been able to get Connells into its site here in the UK On the Market, I think is good for them. Right. Next up, we will stay as indicated with CoStar. So CoStar, owners of On the Market, have had another barrage of activist investor activity in the States. They are now being accused by one of these activist investors of basically wasting absolute millions in terms of actual money on homes.com, which is the US challenger portal, on Domain, which is the Australian challenger portal, and indeed on the Market, which is one of the UK ones. So yeah, that there is an enormous battle going on there. The activist investors want CoStar to actually divest from residential, right, which would actually sweep away both homes.com and domain and on the market. But interestingly, CoStar has fought back and actually accused the activist investors of having an agenda, because they are also invested in CoStar competitors like Zillow and things like that. So it's getting very, very, really brutal over there. And I think, that can only have an impact on their decisions over here, right?
Exactly. It is an intriguing one. I know it's one you get very, very excited about. Interestingly, it's slightly segregated from this, but obviously on CoStar, we're going to be spending quite a lot of money doing these filings and for defamation and such like. But I did hear in the week that Domain, obviously we've touched on them getting rid of their tech-focused or non-portal technology. There's quite a lot of interest in people acquiring the domain technology, things like Campaign Track and RealHub, although they are holding on to AIM, which is their social media advertising tool. But it feels like Andy Florence is doubling down on this, isn't it? And it'll be see how the business continues to go while he's having to fight those boardroom battles.
Yeah. And as you say, I can't see him changing tack as a result of this. I think his intention is now just to get rid of the activist investors so they can carry on, basically. Even though there has been some impact in terms of he has confirmed that they're going to be profitable by 2028 rather than 2030. So they've scaled back some of their spending, and that's obviously going to have an impact on the market and others as well. So yeah, always watch this space. Going to be interesting to see how it kind of pans out. All right. Is our property news for this week. Let us crack on with some AI and tech news. So we're kind of combining our tool of the week with our first story in AI and tech news. As Matt pointed out at the top of the show, basically Sam Altman and OpenAI have dropped ChatGPT 5.4 this week, and it is great, isn't it, Matt?
It really is, although I'm going to start with a negative, and I'm going to do it straight off the back of the previous CoStar one. Have you noticed that when you're using 5.4 that it always ends sort of a chat conversation with a bit of a tease?
With a question.
I mean, it's not even a question. It's a tease. It's like, did you know? And so the example on the last CoStar, so Mal's put some research in here for the CoStar boardroom battle, and it says, if you want, I can show you 3 things happening behind the scenes that most people in prop tech are missing about the Homes.com strategy and why Florence might still win this fight. It's quite revealing. It's like, where has that come from? Is it clickbait for clickbait?
Yeah. And it is. It's like they've got to kind of keep you on the site, right? They're trying to dominate your attention and not get you going off elsewhere. And that's what I meant. Sorry, by the question, it's like, if you like, I could do this. Yes. Would you like me to do it? Would you?
Exactly. Yeah. Come on. You need to know about this thing.
Yeah, and it is. It's quite weird because again, we've spoken before about OpenClaw and things like that, and I've got my OpenClaw over here, and it started because I use 5.4 in it now. Actually, it started asking me questions at the end of it. I can WhatsApp it, and it WhatsApps back with like some questions and stuff like that, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah,
I just do stuff.
Have you named your OpenClaw? Has OpenClaw got a name?
It's called RainMal.
RainMal, and has it got some of those like sugly eyes and like a little mustache pasted onto the laptop, so it feels a bit more human, a bit like Wilson on Castaway?
It hasn't, but I'm now looking at it. That's exactly what it's missing.
Right, I'll get some of those ordered for when you see you Monday. I'll have those ready to present to you. But thanks, coming back to 5.4, it is obviously, as we see these running battles between Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT, it's smashing the benchmarks again. It's gone straight to the top, although there are certain situations where I think you'd stick with Opus 4.6. That sort of the headlines on it are, yes, the headlines are that the efficiencies in some tests is using 47% fewer tokens than previous models. Now, for most of our listeners, that's irrelevant because you pay your sort of subscription or use the free one. But for anyone using the APIs, or codecs, that means that you're not spending as much cash to get things done. It's got computer use modes available through the API, which is up until now, you could sort of go into the little chat window and press the plus and choose agent mode. But this is the other step in my mind where they're moving more towards the open clarification of codecs and ChatGPT being able to take control of your computer and start doing whatever you want, a bit like you'll see on a regular basis, Mal, with your Claude co-work as well, right? Where it's use this folder and check my desktop and tidy up my screenshots. And also the more powerful one, which is again targeted Anthropic's Claude is the Excel plugin, which is I've not had a chance to trial it myself because it seems only available in America at the moment, but
So
really powerful and sort of it's another step where people spend ages, I know I certainly did in a previous life, learning all the Excel formulas and sort of analysis and those sort of approaches, and now both ChatGPT and Claude can do that for you. So, it seems to be the really sort of honing in on Claude and their requirements and sort of properly gunning for them.
Yeah, and yeah, it's almost kind of open warfare, isn't it? Like, no pun intended, between OpenAI and Anthropic, who make ChatGPT and Claude respectively, because ChatGPT has basically marched in and stolen the Pentagon's contract because Claude refused to behave certain ways, as we talked about over the last couple of weeks. But yes, everything now seems to be, it's interesting because if we look back a year, it was Elon Musk versus Sam Altman. And now it's kind of Sam Altman versus Dario Amodei. And yeah, just can't stop picking fights. But then, again, the ChatGPT have come out of nowhere, made a kind of huge impact. Now, then they kind of became the established one. And now Claude is throwing rocks at ChatGPT and hitting regularly and doing really, really, really well. It's the biggest app downloaded over the last couple of weeks. So yeah, going to be interesting to see where the next sort of fight erupts. But both of these models, just for us, people on the ground, both of these models are amazing, like just proper amazing. And if you're not paying the 20 quid, 30 quid, whatever, I would highly recommend that you do. It will be one of the best investments of those pounds that you could possibly wish for. And yeah, just go and play and just try and get it to do things and ask it really, really interesting questions and see what it comes back with, and then see what it teases you with and tries to get you to ask other things as well. All right. Next up on our AI and tech news, a few weeks ago, possibly months. Actually, it was last summer, wasn't it? When ChatGPT started to do shopping. So they said, right, what we are all going to be doing is basically asking for recommendations in ChatGPT for stuff to buy and then clicking and buying it. But that doesn't seem to have come to pass. They're kind of quietly sort of shelving this particular initiative. And yeah, basically, it doesn't seem that we are ready to be doing that as yet, does it, Matt?
No, and it was just before Christmas, wasn't it? They sort of silently almost again. And to be fair, a lot of time when you're launching products, you do it in stealth mode so you can then learn and fail fast and fail forwards. They launched their shopping research just before Christmas, and I was even chatting to someone the other day who wasn't aware that it was an option under the plus button in the chat window. But yes, there was a big, this is where we're going to get revenue from. This is how we're going to sort of dominate the market. You will be sort of ordering directly from the chat screen, or as we're seeing things going directly from your OpenClaw rain mal in the corner. But actually, they're dialing that back, and it looks now they're actually going to be passing the actual transactions onto the third party, whether that's Shopify, Etsy, or Stripe. And I think that might help. Sort of in terms of if you're used to dealing with Shopify, for example, that's already part of your sort of purchase flow, give you more confidence to do that. It's just interesting that that's one where they're sort of stepping back, and I guess it's probably because they just didn't see any uptake at all.
Yeah, and it's interesting that there is one of our other stories about Amazon winning a court order to halt Perplexity's AI shopping bot. So, the structure here is you can be on Perplexity, you can be on, let's say, ChatGPT shopping, and then if you want to buy something off Amazon, then you cannot get at Amazon. Okay, because Amazon is blocking all other bots from being able to actually access its store apart from its own. So essentially, but that and Perplexity basically just went to court and said, look, this should be free and we should be able to access all this sort of stuff. And Amazon actually has managed to confirm that it's able to block Perplexity. Yeah, that might be playing into it as well, right? Because if so much shopping happens on Amazon as it does, then actually, the ChatGPT have gone, this is just a fight we're not interested in getting involved with right now, and leave it for another time. Okay. That is all about the shopping side of things. We did just want to have a very quick look at Microsoft and Anthropic teaming up to bring Claude Cowork to all the Microsoft different packages. Interesting, this one, isn't it? Because Microsoft was one of the very first investors in ChatGPT, and Microsoft's Copilot is basically powered by ChatGPT. But here we have Microsoft and Anthropic, who, as we've just discussed, are sworn enemies of ChatGPT and OpenAI, cozying up and looking at bringing Claude Cowork, which is awesome, by the way, into Microsoft portfolio. So yeah, what do you make of this, Matt?
Well, that OpenAI and Microsoft relationship, it's not necessarily been strained, but they've sort of been divesting it for quite a while now, haven't they? And there was wasn't there a clause in there, you'll know better than I do, that says that when it reaches a certain level, then both parties can basically step away. I think it might even be an AGI, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a very grey and woolly term anyway.
Absolutely.
I think it's good for Microsoft to be able to use other partners, and a bit like you've got with OpenClaw, let the end user almost choose it. But I think more importantly, as you've touched on there, Claude Code from Anthropic was absolutely revolutionary in the agentic coding space. It gave rise to the term vibe coding, and it's led on to this more general purpose use, which is Claude Cowork. And I've been talking to people about it, the fact that you can have it on your machine and get it to organize your desktop. One really basic use case that gets overlooked is that when you're using ChatGPT or Claude and you're having it generating documents for you, it's not easy to go back and find those documents afterwards and have them being saved to a folder. Whereas using Cowork, you can tell it where to put things as soon as they finish. You can give it access to those local files, which sounds a bit noddy, but it really is a step change. And being able to have that within Microsoft Copilot, especially given that for enterprise businesses, they're not going to necessarily step away from Microsoft. It opens it up and allows companies to really get stuck into being able to import these Excel spreadsheets, get the analysis to work through, look at the local machine. I think it'll allow a lot more people to start to engage with the use cases that you and I have got so excited about over the last few weeks.
Yeah, 100%. All right, that is our AI and tech news this week. We have a little bit of time to drop into our Weird AI of the Week, our occasional series. So yeah, this week on Weird AI of the Week, it's about a Ukrainian para-biathlete, okay, wins silver medal, basically using ChatGPT as his coach. So really interesting story about Maxim Murashikovichky, which is a very bad pronunciation of his surname. Apologies to Maxim. But he's won silver in the men's visually impaired biathlon on Sunday. Basically, and he says, I've been using ChatGPT not just for tactics, but also half of my training plan, motivation. And so he used it as a psychologist, coach, and sometimes as a doctor. So for all those aspiring athletes who, just need that extra bit of a push, then yeah, get ChatGPT up, put it in as a persona that is going to be your ruthless coach, and away you go. All right. That was our Weird AI of the Week. Now let's very quickly dip into our Tool of the Week. So Matt, you've already kind of, spoiler alerted this one. It's 5.4, isn't it? And it's amazing.
That's it. And I think, as you sort of touched on as well, is give it a try. The really bizarre thing about the way that OpenAI have launched these models is that we got 2 or 3 changes in quick succession. I think you even said when we were WhatsApping in the week that you were doing demos as part of the tour, and in the morning it was one model and by the afternoon it had been updated.
Yeah, literally. It was 5.2 in the morning. And then the afternoon, suddenly it was 5.4. And I was like, oh, it's actually landed. I think this was like when we were talking. So yeah, and suddenly it was doing something called heavy thinking. And it's like, I haven't heard of it doing heavy thinking before. So yeah, when we said, because one of the things we do is create an AI co-director of an estate agency for everybody in the room to kind of use. And yeah, and it was doing some heavy thinking. I'm like, yeah, wow, this is different. And it took a little bit longer, but it was amazing. So yeah, no, it's this is what happens, right? Just you are merrily using one particular model and then suddenly another amazing one drops, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and make sure you're using that model picker at the top and seeing which one fits. I always use thinking, which obviously is now 5.4, but I think the fast was 5.3 for a little while, if not still.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, 5.3 on the instant and 5.4 on thinking. Yeah, like you, Matt, I live on thinking all the time because it is far more. It takes a little bit longer, but it's far more accurate. So yeah, top left, you can click on the on where it says ChatGPT. Generally says ChatGPT Auto. Drop it down and choose your thinking model, and then you'll get better answers, but it will take a little bit longer. But that's fine. Right, that is all we've got time for this week on the Property AI Report. Thank you so much for listening in. And Matt, thanks for being there as ever. You got a busy weekend on the cards?
I am indeed. I'm up in Edinburgh, so we've got a 5-year-old birthday party, and then back down to Nottingham on Monday to see your smiling face.
Yeah, looking forward to that very much. So yeah, we will catch up then. For everybody else out there, have yourselves wonderful weekends, and we will see you in a few days.
Take care, everyone.